Hey everyone, so in light of my previous video, which broke down Saturday's divisional playoff games, I thought why not also do the same for Sunday's divisional playoff games. So that being said, let's get right into the swing of things. And we'll start with the primetime game on Sunday, which is the Dallas Cowboys playing the San Francisco 49ers. And as I said in my previous video about the Cowboys, miracles do happen. The Cowboys actually won their first road playoff game for the first time in forever, actually. So they get the task of playing the 49ers, who have won 11 straight games. They don't have Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance as their quarterback right now. No, they've got Mr. Irrelevant, aka Brock Purdy, who was the last pick in the NFL draft and is now only 2 wins away from the Super Bowl. So anything can happen, right? But let's break down this game, shall we? These two teams actually met last year in the wild card round in Dallas, with the 49ers beating the Cowboys 23-17. Nobody talks about that game. They just talk about how the game ended that year, with the Cowboys running a quarterback sneak with no timeouts at the end of the game. So if you're the Cowboys, it can't end more embarrassing than that. So let's look at this game in the present tense. San Francisco offensively has a abundance of goodies, much like the Philadelphia Eagles. You've got George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Elijah Mitchell, who's come back now from injury to back up McCaffrey. I mean, you can't go wrong with that amount of talent. And then you've got Brock Purdy. Is he Patrick Mahomes? No. Is he, shall we say, Aaron Rodgers or Joe Burrow? No. Hell, he's not even Lamar Jackson. But what Purdy has done so well since he came in after Garoppolo suffered that serious ankle injury, Purdy has not made too many mistakes as far as turnovers and things like that. He's been able to get the ball to players like Kittle, Deebo, McCaffrey, etc., and has allowed them to make the plays that they have to do in order for the 49ers to win games. And Kyle Shanahan, he knows how to call a game. He knows how to commit to the running game with McCaffrey and Mitchell to control clock. He knows how to design plays to get Deebo, Kittle, Ayuk, etc. open. So as long as Kyle Shanahan doesn't have a fourth quarter lead in a playoff game, everything's okay. But it's going to be very difficult for Dallas's defense to control the 49ers offensively. They have to have big games. Micah Parsons really has to step up this week. He had a pretty good game last week against Tampa Bay, as did the Dallas defense for the most part. But Dallas has to find a way to pressure Purdy, hopefully get him to commit some turnovers and limit some of the 49ers' possessions, because much like Philadelphia, once the 49ers offense gets going, they're very difficult to stop. As we've seen throughout this 11-game winning streak, I mean, the 49ers can literally strike just like that, and then you look up and they're up 2 possessions or 3 possessions, and then you're pretty much screwed. Now, Dallas offensively, this is really going to be what determines, in my opinion, who wins this game. Will Dak Prescott play like he did last week against Tampa Bay when he threw for 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, did not make any mistakes? Or will we see the Dak Prescott that was turning the ball over left and right, had that meltdown against the Commanders a few weeks ago when Dallas got embarrassed by almost 2 or 3 possessions? I don't remember the final score. So Prescott has to play clean. Dallas has to win the turnover battle in order to win this game. If they commit 2 or 3 turnovers, they're not going to beat the 49ers in San Francisco. They also need to get the running game going. Pollard had a decent game last week. Zeke only had about, I think, 30 yards rushing. They really have to control the line of scrimmage in this game, so Dallas's O-line has to push back against the Niners' D-line of Nick Bosa, Warner, and all those guys up front. If Pollard and Zeke can, I would say, get 100 yards combined together, Dallas has a chance to win because you have to keep the 49ers offense off the field and you have to get the running game going in order to open things up for Dak to get obviously CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Dalton Schultz involved. And to a lesser extent, Noah Brown as well. So Dallas has to get the running game going, which will be very tough against the 49ers defense. They're one of the best in the NFL, I believe in the top 5. So the Dallas O-line has to hold up and not allow Bosa, who has 18.5 sacks this year, to get pressure on Dak, because when Dak gets a lot of pressure, that's when he starts to make mistakes in the passing game and not really seeing the ball very well or going through his reads. So if Dallas's O-line does not hold up and they can't get the running game going, the 49ers defense is going to go off on Dak and it won't end well for Dallas. So that being said, on the 49ers side, the same thing. If McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell can get going in the running game, that opens things up, of course, for Debo, for Ayuk, George Kittle, etc. And then the 49ers offense can do what they did against Seattle last week, where really through 3 quarters the game was close, and then all of a sudden a turnover happened. Next thing you know, 49ers go down the field, touchdown, they're up 12. The 49ers are very explosive, so you have to try to limit the big plays if you're Dallas. And you have to keep the game close as much as possible and hopefully maybe get a break or two, a turnover or something to help them get the win. But it's going to come down to which Dallas team shows up. And if you look at this like I am, Dallas is too inconsistent. One week they can look like one of the best teams in the NFL. The next week they can look like they did against the Commanders a few weeks ago, or when they were barely beating teams like Houston, blowing 17-point leads to Jacksonville. So that being said, the 49ers are the hottest team in the NFL right now, and I think they're going to find a way yet again, even with their third-string quarterback, to get to another NFC Championship game. So my prediction is San Francisco will move on. Final score will be, in my view, San Francisco 30, Dallas 17. Now that brings us to the final game of the divisional playoff weekend, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Buffalo Bills. And the last time these two teams played, for many of us who will not forget that game on Monday Night Football almost 3 weeks ago, when that game was stopped in the first quarter after the near horrifying incident that took place where Bills safety Damar Hamlin nearly died from cardiac arrest on the field. So putting all that aside, and from what I've heard, Damar Hamlin might be at the game today, at least according to some reports I've read. I don't know if that's official. It's going to be very interesting to see how these two teams will play in light of previous circumstances. This game will be in Buffalo, so some advantage, I think, goes there for the Bills. But much like the Dallas-San Francisco game, this game is going to come down to turnovers, because last week the Bills committed, I think, 3 turnovers. Josh Allen threw 2 interceptions, had a fumble that led to a touchdown. And that game against the Dolphins was way too close for, I think, many Bills fans. That game should not have been as competitive as it was with the Dolphins on their third-string quarterback. Now, that being said, the Ravens last week were on their backup quarterback, and they nearly beat the Bengals in Cincinnati. But the Bills have to play clean. They can't be turning the ball over like they did last week because Cincinnati will take full advantage of that. Joe Burrow, he's played very well in the playoffs last year, of course, getting the Bengals to the Super Bowl. He had a pretty good game last week against Ravens, especially in the second half. But there are some injuries on the Bengals O-line from what I understand. I believe 2 of their offensive linemen are not going to play today because of injuries, so that's going to be very interesting if the Bengals O-line can hold up against the Bills D-line. Last week, the Bills, I think, had about 5 sacks against Miami. And last year, we saw the Bengals' inability to protect Joe Burrow ultimately cost them in the Super Bowl, of course, and in the playoffs even before that when Burrow was getting sacked 9 times against Tennessee, X amount of times against the Rams in Super Bowl 56. So if the Bengals O-line can't protect Burrow in this game and the Bills can go after him, it's going to be a long day for the Bengals offense. Now that being said, the Bengals have Jamar Chase healthy. They've got T. Higgins healthy. They've got Mixon and Pirine, who they can use in both the passing and the running game to kind of take some pressure off Burrow. So if the Bengals can limit the turnovers, obviously, as well, and also get some sustained drives, which they didn't really do last week, they can keep the Bills' offense off the field and kind of put more pressure on Josh Allen to make some mistakes because he hasn't been playing well, I would say, the last couple weeks, especially going back to the wild card game last week against Miami. And for the Buffalo Bills, obviously we mentioned the turnovers, but if they can get Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox had a big game last week, Cole Beasley made some big plays. If they can get that going and get some good play out of James Cook and Devin Singletary, who they kind of use as complementary pieces, Buffalo can also kind of limit the Bengals' offensive possessions, because in a game like this, you really want to control the clock. The Bills don't really run the ball very much with their running backs. They've got Josh Allen who can run the ball, so they kind of use him as a running back at times. But the Bills have to really focus, I think, on this game, because last week it didn't seem like they were fully focused and it nearly cost them. So the key is going to be, can the Bills maintain their emotion and control, especially if Damar Hamlin is at the game? Will that give them an extra spark and motivation to go out there and get one step closer to the Super Bowl? Who can control themselves more in the big moments, I think, is going to determine ultimately who wins this game and goes on to play the Chiefs next week in the AFC Championship game. I guess lastly, regardless of what happens in this Bills-Bengals game, what happened 3 weeks ago when we saw the Bills and the Bengals come together and say, no, we're not going to play in light of what happened on the field on January 2nd. And to see the support that both teams had for each other and what the city of Cincinnati did for the Bills and just everyone involved in regards to that game was truly remarkable. And both sides deserve a lot of credit, and our thoughts and prayers still need to be with Damar Hamlin, because while he's recovering, he still has a long road ahead of him, and who knows if he'll be able to play football again. But putting all that aside, we have to look at this game objectively as far as who we think has the edge. And I think Cincinnati, just because offensively they've been playing much better as opposed to Buffalo, who's been kind of inconsistent lately. And the fact that I just think the Bengals running game will be able to kind of keep Buffalo off the field. It's going to be a very close game, but my prediction is the Bengals will move on to have a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. My prediction is Cincinnati 27, Buffalo 21. That's my breakdown of Sunday's slate of games. And to all the teams involved today, may the odds be ever in your favor.